Everyone's heard of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, but have you heard of the Soviet turtles? Well, you see, these two turtles beat NASA by a few months and were the first species to make the journey around the moon on September 14th, 1968. Let me give you some context. Russia were falling behind America in the space race. The Apollo program was a few weeks away from its first crewed test flight. Meanwhile, Russia didn't even have a launch vehicle that could carry a spacecraft around the moon, which needed oxygen, food and water for the astronauts. Literally the year before, Vladimir Komarov died as his spacecraft burst into flames as it fell back to Earth. Anyways, in a last-ditch effort to beat America, they whipped up a spacecraft, stuck turtles on board because they were one of the most self-sufficient and chill animals, and chucked them into space. Surprisingly, this mission worked. The turtles went around the moon and landed back on Earth. They were meant to land in Kazakhstan, but they ended up landing in the Indian Ocean. But hey, as long as they made it back in one piece, it's alright. This trip had basically no effect on the turtles as well. They lost a bit of body weight, but besides that, they were completely fine. So yeah, big up the turtles. This is Strelka and Belka. They look funny. Once again, they were sent by the Russians. It is a bit weird how good Russians are at sending animals into space. The Russians already had a victory under their belt with the launch of Sputnik 1 in 1957, which was the first satellite to orbit Earth. In Sputnik 5, they sent the two dogs alongside two rats, a rabbit, fruit flies and plants into orbit. During takeoff, they were all completely fine and dandy, but once in orbit, neither dog was moving. Then during the fourth orbit, Belka started vomiting, which woke Strelka up. After doing 17 orbits around the Earth, they landed back down. When the capsule was opened, they were both completely fine and unharmed. However, Belka did look completely done with Strelka's bullshit. Then 2 months after Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit Earth, President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Khrushchev held a meeting and Jackie Kennedy started talking about the dogs. Strelka had puppies and Jackie had asked for one of them. A few weeks later, a puppy turned up at the White House with a Russian passport. After being screened for spyware by the FBI, Pushnika,
What did you say, nigga?
Pushnika, the puppy, became part of Kennedy's family. Apparently this puppy was more than a gift and helped prevented World War III by making some sort of a weird friendship between Kennedy and Khrushchev because he gave him the dog.
Oh, friend! Please be my friend! Oh, friend! Oh, friend!
Fuck you lot, where's the beer?
Felishoti was an astray Parisian cat that became the first cat to be launched into space. What an underdog story, from being homeless to being an astronaut. She was one of the 15 female cats that were selected for this mission. These cats went through very rigorous training, such as being confined in small containers, exposed to high G-forces in centrifuges, and trained to handle rocket noises and vibrations. After these tests, Felishoti was chosen due to her composure and calmness. She had electrodes implanted into her skull so her neurological activity could be monitored and examined the effects of microgravity. She flew aboard a French AG-1 rocket and the mission only lasted for around 15 minutes. She experienced 5 minutes of weightlessness. She then landed back down safely on Earth and her mission was a success. In 2019, she got a bronze statue at the International Space Union in France.
Absolute disgrace. It's about as useful as tits on a fish.
Next up is a monkey called Ham. Poor Ham's been through a lot. Ham's life began in the French Cameroon where he was kidnapped by animal trappers and then brought over to the United States. He was purchased by the US Air Force, bit dodgy, and became part of the space program at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. He underwent the usual tests and was trained to perform simple tasks like pushing levers. On January 31st, 1961, he took off in his rocket from Florida. The duration of this flight was around 16 minutes. During this flight, Ham successfully did all the tasks he was asked to do. However, there were a few issues. The capsule experienced partial loss of pressure, but Ham was protected by his spacesuit. On the way back down to Earth, the capsule splashed down harder than expected in the Atlantic Ocean. When the rescue team reached the capsule, they opened it to find Ham reasonably healthy inside with a bruise on his nose. The mission was considered a huge success and Ham became a famous public figure. For all his hard work and training, his reward being put in the National Zoo of Washington DC. Like, just send the poor guy back to Cameroon or something. He lived in the zoo for 17 years and became a very popular attraction. Then in 1980, he got sent to a more naturalistic zoo and lived with other chimpanzees, which really puts a smile on my face. Ham died in 1983 at age 26. What a legend.